Good morning and welcome to the Closers Inner Circle podcast. I'm Denise Griffitts alongside my co-host Ben Gay III. And today's episode is sponsored by the Closers, also known as the Sales Bibles, written by Ben Gay III. Now, these essential resources are designed to elevate your sales skills, and it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or you are a seasoned pro. Stay tuned, and Ben will share with you how you can order these game-changing books. And I really do hate that term game-changing, but in this case, it's appropriate. I try not to use it unless I'm talking about the closers. And he'll share with you how to get them with free shipping in just a few minutes. So last week, we finished up Don't Let Them Distract You in the closers part 2. We've been working with this book for quite a while now. That began on page 43. And today we are opening up on page 17, the first step to sales success. Now, if you have ever felt stuck in your sales role, I do it all the time, or struggling to meet the high standards, this is important, or struggling to meet the high standards that you set for yourself and your product, this episode really is for you. It's a bit about imposter syndrome, but we do feel like we have to be the best all the time. And that's nothing to sneeze at. It's not something that we should go, oh, I'll do okay today. But there's a lot of wisdom in this particular chapter. So good morning, Ben. Welcome. It's Wednesday. It's my favorite day of the week. I always get to talk with you.
Feeling is mutual, and I really feel good because I just heard the trash truck go by outside, and there's two meaningful happenings in my life. Every Wednesday I get to do this show with you, and they pick up the trash. So one is underway, and the other one is underway, and the other one is completed.
Okay. Now I'm going to have my trash is Tuesdays and Fridays. Now I'm going to be stuck with Wednesday too. Oh. Anyway, it's good to chat with you. And high expectations. Listen, I think we're both guilty of that. It's not a bad thing, but sometimes if you're not careful, it can cripple you.
Oh, absolutely.
It can. And I know you mentioned in our virtual green room, you've got some questions. We get a lot of really entrancing questions that people ask after they hear us chatting.
Well, I had one yesterday that I made a note of. It was from a gentleman. It's not really a question. It was a request. I'm beginning to feel like an old rock and roll band, and they're asking us to do cover music or cover stories. I think I told you I met with Three Dog Night on a plane trip somewhere. I was sitting next to the drummer, and after we went through the pleasantries, and I determined they're not recognizable, at least not to me. They're not the Beatles or Elvis. They're five wonderful middle-aged men who happen to play music. So it wasn't like meeting Frank Sinatra. I had to find out what he did and everything. And once we pinned it down, it was Three Dog Night, Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog, etc. Groping for something to say, since I didn't really know anything about the music, I said, do you play just the standards or do you play new stuff? He said, oh, we mix it up. He said, we have to play new stuff because the audience has to go to the bathroom. And I, boy, that narrows it right down. He understands the game. I asked Zig, I think it was years ago, I said, give me a couple of tips that can help me, because he was a pretty well-known speaker and about to become really well-known, and I wasn't. And but I was starting to gain some traction, and within the company I was in, they were asking me to do meetings and so on. And I said, a couple of speaking secrets, Zig, tell me what's important. He said, I'll give you two things. It'll really help your career. And I said, all right. I don't think I got out a notepad, but that was my attitude. The master is about to share with Grasshopper. And he said, never pass up a chance to go to the bathroom or to sit down. And I've thought about him so many times over the years when that was the truth. I pass the men's room, I'm in it. because I might not see another one for 4 hours. And I see a comfortable place to sit down, flop down, because again, I may not have another opportunity for 3 or 4 hours. So I always think of Zig when he gives me that information. But anyway, a guy who worked for us in the old days apparently listens to our show. He's never told me that before, but we were chatting. He said, "All right, in closing," which I assumed meant the conversation was about over. He said, "I've got a tip for your show with Denise." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "I'm going to give you 3 words, and we'll see how good your memory is." And I said, "All right." He said, "cherry red lipstick," and hung up. So he happened to hit on one that I knew because I told the story more than a few times. I wasn't a whiner when I started out in business. I was too stupid to whine. I was just excited. But I did have a tendency to major in minor things. And somehow we ran out of cherry red lipstick. We had, I don't know, 100 items in the line, counting colors and all. But we were out of cherry red lipstick. And I guess it was one of our more popular shades, because everywhere I went, every speech I gave, the ladies especially, and some of the men who kept track of the inventory would come up to me and say, "Cherry red lipstick, when are we going to have cherry red lipstick?" And so I, like a parrot, shared that with Bill Patrick several times at the office and socializing and so on. And as president of the company, I probably should have just handled it, but we had a guy named Bill Brogan who'd been a general in the Marine Corps. He was in charge of purchasing. He was there long before I got there, and he sort of had a direct relationship with Bill Patrick. So my attitude was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. He knows how to buy things. He knows to acquire things. He doesn't need the "Hi, I'm Ben Gay and I'm in charge now" lecture. So I just sort of left it alone, and it was easier to tell Bill Patrick we were out of cherry red lipstick than to tell General Brogan that we were out. So we're flying somewhere, I always say over Dallas, because it's roughly halfway across the country from where I am, but we're flying along. We'll say it's over Dallas. And Bill said, "Benjamin, anything bugging you?" And I said, "Funny you should ask." And so I went into my cherry red lipstick story. And it's out, and everywhere I go, they're telling me, and it must be cutting into sales. And like I cared. The truth is, I didn't care about cherry red lipstick, but I was being asked about it 5, 6, 7, 10 times a day. So I thought I would pass it on. Bill Patrick reaches over, picks up the intercom, the mic from where we were sitting about halfway back in the Learjet, to talk to Art Stagg, the pilot, and he said, "Art, pick out a light on the ground, identify it, and circle it until Mr. Gay and I agree that we're all looking at the same light." Art, having had many strange requests since he worked with us, I felt the plane bank, and then we went into a circle, and we ran an airport, so I'd spent enough time around planes to know what he had done was put a wingtip on some light on the ground, probably 25,000 feet beneath us, and he was circling it. You just put your wingtip on the spot and circle it and so on. There are many reasons to do that, but in this case, it was because Bill Patrick asked him to. So we circled, and he said, "You see that light down there?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Which one?" He called my bluff. There were lots of lights down there. He said, "No, we're going to agree on a light." And he said, "Do you see the big whatever, the red sign?" "Yes." "Okay. Go over 2 blocks." Now, the whole time he's talking, our relationship to that light is changing. We're flying in a circle. So 2 blocks to the right doesn't mean much. 10 seconds later, now it's 3 blocks to the left or whatever. So we talked about it, and I tried to bluff him a couple of more times, and finally we got down to where I was pretty sure we were looking at the same light. It was within what would have been a short drive on the streets, of a great big reddish white sign that was probably a grocery store or something. So we're circling and we're looking out, and the two of us, we have our heads, the window in a Learjet's about the size of a toilet seat opening. So we've got our two heads jammed in that little opening, and we're still discussing the light. Finally, Bill agrees that we're looking at the same light. And he said, now, let me tell you what I think that is. I think that's a house, 3 bedrooms. 4 people live there, the mother, the father, 2 children, and their dog. Got it? I said, I got it. And he said, I believe they're having dinner. I said, okay. He said, can you picture that? And I said, yeah, we're circling the Learjet in circles at whatever cost per hour. And he says, and I believe the car is parked outside in the driveway, and it's sort of like an Ozzie and Harriet home. And I said, okay. And he said, now, here's the important part. What? He said, I don't think they give a shit that we're out of cherry red lipstick. He picked up the...
I was waiting. I actually quit breathing. I was waiting for some snark to come somewhere. And it did not disappoint. So thank you.
Pardon my French, but that's exactly what he said. Then he picked up the microphone and said to Art, on to Atlanta, Art. And the plane straightened up and on we went. And needless to say, I never mentioned cherry red lipstick again. A few weeks later, the problem was solved, but it wasn't because I talked to anybody. I just touched it up whenever we called them holiday girls, whenever some holiday girl cornered me and say, well, I'll look into it or whatever. And the other thing was, Holiday Magic, the line, when it started, they didn't have any money to speak of, and they bought an existing line called Zoline, bought the rights to it, changed the name, relabeled the inventory that existed, call it Holiday Magic Cosmetics, and off they went. But it came with black caps. And so, not unlike cherry red lipstick, the entire time Bill Patrick and I worked together, I said the product would look so much better with gold caps or silver caps or something. Black caps looks like drugstore cosmetics, like cherry red lipstick. We didn't go for a plane ride, but he wasn't impressed with my concern with black lids. So years later, we've parted ways. He's killed in a plane crash. I'm starting, in addition to another big company we had with all sorts of products, I decided to add cosmetics to the line. And so I picked up the phone and called my friend who worked for us at Holiday Magic. He referred me to a guy that was a private label cosmetic manufacturer. He said, call him, they'll get you set up. He said, but wait an hour and let me talk to him first. I'll explain how you like to operate, which is that I'm a generalist. I really don't care as long as someone who's an expert tells me that the product is great and I have reason to believe them, that I'm in. I don't need to know how the silicons match with this and that and so on. And so I said, fine, got the phone number, waited an hour, called, and this nice gentleman answers the phone, and we begin chatting about the new line we're going to do, which I named after my previous wife. It was called Carlotta Cosmetics, and so on. And so I said to the guy, look, here's what...
I have to ask, is this the wife that you didn't recognize when you were sitting next to her on a park bench?
The same one.
See, I do listen to you. Okay, keep going.
This thing, who's now passed away. She died of cancer a few months ago, I guess it's been now.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Gigi and I have been together almost 30 years, so that's distant past. But yeah, same lady. And I'd tell that story, except it also has a cuss word in it. And I believe that I've done enough cussing for the day. So anyway, the nice gentleman says to me, Mort told me how you like to work. I'm the expert. You're not. And I said, right. And he said, you're comfortable with that? And I said, right. And he said, okay, then he's told me that there's only 2 quirks that I have to be aware of while working with you, because I just told him, build the line. You need base tones, and you need lipstick, and you need eyeshadow and skin cream and body lotion and so on. So make sure we have one of all of those and so on. He said, so the two quirks I've been warned about are, one, never run out of cherry red lipstick. And two, he said, and two, gold caps. And I
Right.
said, you got it. Those
No
are my
black lids.
no
Right.
black lids. I said, those are my contributions to our new cosmetic line. He said, all right, he said, are you going to tell the story about she got with a chemist and they developed? I said, yeah, take that story and go with that. And I'll tell her what we're doing, what we're really doing. Every cosmetic you read, I couldn't find the cosmetic I liked, so I got with this scientist, and we did the. Those are even funnier if it's a famous person that's talking, because they know even less about the product than someone who might have had a hand in it just because they couldn't afford
Right.
to have anybody else have a hand in it. I always
And
get a
that
kick
still
out of.
happens. That still, you'll
Oh,
see. I'm not an influencer follower. I mean, if you're an influencer, I'm probably just going to sniffle at you. I don't care. And, you know, you just stick my nose in the air and keep on going. But I'll read some of the stories just like you described. I'm like, oh, give it a rest. I have heard this over and okay, I didn't trust you to start with. Now I really don't trust you.
exactly. Why are you You don't have to lie to me about this point. There's a famous football player who appears on a commercial. I won't name him or the product because I happen to like them both, but he says that it's a service actually. He called them to see if he could get free rides to and from his medical appointments with this service. He's a multimillionaire. If he drives his own car, it's because he wants to drive his own car, not because he has to. And I think it just in the middle of the commercial, it goes clang, 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 clang. Why are you telling me that? I don't need to hear what is obviously a lie. Now it makes me wonder about everything else you've said. We did
I
when
agree.
we had the big answering service, we sold Tova 9. That was a cosmetic done by Tova Borgnine, Ernie Borgnine's wife.
Yeah, I know
And
the name.
yeah,
I never knew
and
who she was, but I loved him.
yeah, well, Tova was his wife, lovely lady, and sort of the boss. I've known a lot of those famous couples where the guy gets the attention, and it can be vice versa, that the guy gets attention, but behind the scenes, the lady's really running things. Ern Westmore, the dean of Hollywood makeup artists, wouldn't make a move unless his wife Mary approved it, and she was real clear about that. Don't make any decisions about him unless you and I have talked.
Oh
And so
my.
one day I'm talking to Tova because our relationship was she was a pretty good sized client of the 800 answering service, order taking service, the National Communications Center, and something had come up. And I don't know what it was, but somehow I got involved, wound up talking to her. And so we chatted and solved whatever the issue was. And I said, I've always been a big admirer of your husband. And tell him I said hello. He doesn't know me from Adam, but tell him I said hello. I said, let me ask you one thing. She's Tova of Tova 9 Cosmetics. I'm knee deep in Carlotta Cosmetics and had run Holiday Magic Cosmetics in 20 different countries, each of which told the story, that we're talking about. I said, Tova, did you have a hand in designing the products? Because I think your ads sort of allude to that. And she said, well, the truth is I've driven past the factory where they're made. I said, okay, that's good enough for me. I appreciate your honesty. So
Sign an NDA. I mean, today you would
yeah,
be sued for
it
telling
was
me that.
famous name attached
Well,
to a
I do
product.
recall seeing, you know, I prefer history of any kind to anything that's current these days. It's just too messy and too icky. And, I will find a movie or a book and that person, Ernest Borgnine, I think I saw a movie with him a year ago, an old black and white movie, and it
Ah,
stuck with me. But I was like, "Oh, he's neat." And I had some, other memories. I've seen him around somewhere. So I started, I went online. I wanted to know who this was and what he was all about. And here comes Tova. And I went, "Oh, that's interesting." It's the only reason I know anything about it. I don't know anything at all about her cosmetics. But the name Tova was so unique all by itself that I
yeah.
remembered it.
And I don't know where the 9 came from. There's probably a story behind that that was made up. We used to have a lady at work for us named Christy Nelson who was just unbelievable in coming up with product names and ideas for new products. She worked in the art department, but she was just a genius at doing that. And we'll be watching television, or Gigi will see an ad somewhere, and she'll hold up and say, "Who are you thinking of right now?" And that sort of code between us. I say Christy Nelson, because Christy, or they'll come up with, "This product contains Jabadoo 19." And Gigi will say, "What's Jabadoo 19?" I said, "You have to ask Christy Nelson. She's the one that comes up with with those things, none of which are true." Her best one was a little cosmetic case. It fit in your purse. You open it up. It had blush, a little lip liner, this, that, and so on. And it was called, her name, that was unique enough. And she designed it, and then Scott had to put the product in it, design the product to fit in it. But she called it Just in Case. You're out on a date,
Right.
things,
Yeah,
things,
that's smart.
isn't that good? Just
Yeah.
in case.
And the
And
other side would have to have a condom slot. See, you missed something.
All right,
Sorry.
boys and girls, this is our R-rated version of the Closers
Sorry.
podcast.
Well,
Well, one more note,
it could
just
have
so
been really important. You never know.
one more just to get rid of this note I have, because I have 4 or 5 things on it. The last thing on this note, so I can put it back in the book for next time, is a takeoff on sales infiltration. And I've alluded to this many times, but I saw Trump the other day, and this isn't a political comment, but I saw Trump the other day at the Georgia Alabama game. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
from Georgia, so I'm mildly interested. My dad was from Alabama, and I love Bear Bryant. So if I was ever going to watch a football game, that would be it. I didn't, but that would be it. But they said Trump is going to appear. Sales infiltration, get inside, be part of the group. We've talked about this numerous times. It's a tremendous sales tool. Trump showed up for the Georgia Alabama game, 100,000 people in the stands, and on television, the way the stadium erupted for the moment till the game started, they felt it too. This was a Trump rally that a bunch of people who liked
Mm-hmm.
auto racing happened to be at, who
Yeah.
like college football happened to be at. That sales infiltration. You don't have to build a crowd of
Mm-hmm.
100,000. Go to a crowd of 100,000 and wave. you know, build
Right.
it up and wave. And he's done that with NASCAR. Several races that would have had 150,000 people in the stands and the
Right.
infield anyway.
And
Uh, and he and uh, and he shows up and begins waving to everyone. And again, it looks like a Trump rally, where it
mm-hmm.
was a NASCAR race moments ago and will be again in moments. So there's just another great example. Most of what I teach in sales training could be learned by anybody if you just watch what's going on. Well, why did they do that? Oh, that's interesting. Trump's going to sit on the Georgia, Alabama. The one thing I didn't ever find out, because I didn't really watch the game, I just watched him wave from the booth, was which side of the field was the booth on, and did he change sides at halftime or whatever?
Oh,
Because if I was they do that. The president of the United States does that if he goes to Alabama.
I did
If he
not
goes to
know.
Army Navy game at halftime,
Oh,
they
okay.
swap
Yeah, well, that
sides.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if Trump did that or not, because in my case, it wouldn't make any difference. I like Georgia and I like Alabama, so have at it. But there are people, probably about half of the stadium and half of the viewers. If you're on the Georgia side, I don't like you because I'm for Alabama. But if you swap sides in the middle of the game, I'll forgive you, and vice versa. So that was, I don't know if he handled that well or not because I didn't watch it.
I'm
But
going to
Trump,
have to go find out. I do know that he was behind bulletproof glass.
yeah, yeah, that's become part of his travel name. Travel is
Oh, yeah.
his stuff. So anyway, those are the stories that I put aside. Somebody asked me to ask about. And then if you want to dig into the first step to sales success on page 17, I'm ready to go.
Okay. And I'm going to go find out if he swapped sides. That's to me, that's interesting. And I have a question for you about that plane making a circle in the sky for no good reason. Did anybody ever get down on the ground and go find that house and find out if his supposition was even close to being true? I would have been
I
curious. I would have gotten in a car and gone to go see.
yeah, we're looking for the Sinclair sign. No, over here,
Yeah.
2 blocks
And do you have a
down, etc.
dog? What's your dog's name?
Yeah, yeah. Get your 2 kids out here. But, hey, the real truth, as you know, is I don't know. But I was getting dizzy circling in the sky. I was aware of our fuel, although the pilot was in charge of that. But we ran an airport. We had 40 planes. They don't fly forever. So circling mindlessly in the sky over Dallas was on my nerves just a little bit. And but mainly I wanted the game to end. So I said whatever was necessary for Bill and I to agree on a light. And it was the dining room table light, the chandelier over the table. I had to agree to that also.
You know he was nuts, right? So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
okay, good. I don't know if you
Died in a
noticed
plane
that,
crash
Dan.
because he was nuts.
Oh, I know you told me. That's so sad.
Yeah.
All right, page 17. This is the first chapter in the book, y'all. I mean, we've wandered all over the closers part two, and we'll continue to do so because there's so much information in it. And there's so many things that we'll get to talking, and then we start talking about jets instead. So we don't, it's not always a straightforward conversation with us, which is why we have so much fun with it. But this is the first chapter. It's page 17 and it's called The First Step to Sales Success. And listen, what I took away from it, Ben, was that high expectations can be a very powerful tool, but they can also scare the crap out of you. So let's talk.
Well, one of my secrets to selling is like sales infiltration. And the example I just gave, if you got to stir up a crowd of 100,000, go find a crowd of 100,000. It's much easier to go to an established crowd than create one. My brother-in-law, I've told you this several times, great guy, passed away last 4th of July, was a great fisherman. And I asked him one time, I don't care anything about fishing, but to be polite, I said, what's the secret of you're renowned as a great trout fisherman of everything, but trout was his specialty. What's the secret? And again, I wanted to whip out my notepad so I could write down something I could sell to fishermen. He said, Ben, it's really pretty simple. I go where the trout are. And so I guess you could write a separate book on how to find out where the trout hang out. But
Ask them.
he's living.
Just
Yeah,
ask them.
ask him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, where do you go on Tuesdays? So,
We
but
follow the
his,
cattle. We can follow, honestly, we can follow the cattle in fields and figure out is there any fishing going on? What's going on? We can tell. I
yeah,
say
well,
we, people who I know who are fishermen, I'm in Cajun country, they all fish. They'll tell me,
yeah.
ooh, and they'll be looking at the fields and go, hey, I gotta go. I'm going fishing. Say goodbye. And off they go. And they're
Well,
dead serious about it.
fishermen and other things, driving down the road looking for a good place to eat. My father taught me, look for the trucks, the tractor trailers, back in the days when you drove
Yep.
100 miles between restaurants and so on. And I, why? And he said, because of the cumulative wisdom of people. They drive up and down this road all the time. They have figured out where the good food
The
is at reasonable
locals.
prices.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
locals and so on. One of our favorite restaurants in the world is called the Chowder Bowl. It's in Nye Beach, Oregon, and it's famous for its clam chowder. I'm from New England. I know clam chowder. This is the best clam chowder I've ever had in my life. So we had to, Gigi and I up in the area, never heard of Nye Beach, never heard of the Chowder Bowl. I went in to mail a priority mail package I had with me, and I had to get it in the mail somewhere. Walked into the post office. There's a guy standing over at the counter sorting out his mail, a local, you know what I'm talking about, throws out the junk mail and this goes here and so on one of those little tables they have in the lobby. I said, hi, you're a local. He said, how'd you know that? I said, because you're sorting your mail, not the way you're dressed, but the way you're sorting your mail. I have a question to ask. And he said, what? I said, I want to remember Nye Beach for the rest of my life. It was the Nye Beach post office. Therefore, I want to go to your best restaurant, the one you would be proudest to have represent you. He said, the Chowder Bowl, 2 blocks down this way, 1 block closer to the beach. And he went back to sorting his mail. I'd asked a question. He'd answered it. It wasn't up for discussion. It was the Chowder Bowl. And if any of our listeners are ever in or near Nye Beach, near the ocean, on the Oregon coast, go to the Chowder Bowl, the finest clam chowder on earth. I don't know what they do, but it's just fantastic. But the point of the story is, go to the people who know. People vote with their wallets.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
And this is how I find good Mexican food. I love Mexican food. It's hard to get around here because it's Cajun country. This just
Mm-hmm.
not Mexican. And even if you wander a few miles down the road to Texas, it's Tex-Mex, which I'm not real nuts about. But I was in
Right.
Lodi, California, not so long ago, and I was dying for authentic Mexican food. And I have a rule. You know, if I've seen the name of this restaurant all over the United States, I'm not going in there. If there's
That
fluorescent
rules out
lights,
Taco Bell.
yeah, Taco Bell and any of the others. That's not food. I don't know what that stuff is, but it's not edible. And if it's got, neon signs all over the place and brand new shiny cars in the parking lot, I keep on going
Yep.
until I find a little hole in the wall. It's got a couple of beat up trucks sitting out in front of it. Maybe one's up on blocks. I stick my nose out and I start sniffing for the salsa. Everybody out of the car, let's go. And it's like we are
I
in
found it.
heaven. I found it. And there's this one little spot in Lodi. I went in there. There was nobody else in there but a mother and her daughter back in the kitchen. I all but asked them if they would adopt me. They didn't speak English, so they didn't have to adopt me. But oh my God, I still think about that food.
There's and the locals all know it, and they are happy they have a Taco Bell in town because that keeps the riffraff out of the good
Exactly.
restaurant.
Exactly. And I was heading to my mom's house and I called her. I said, she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm loading up. She said, what are you bringing? And I told her, she said, okay, everybody put the food back in the fridge. They're on their way. And we just took over this whole big feast over there. It was just amazing food. But yeah, you
we
go
had,
where the you go where the trout are. It's basically right.
go with the trout are, go with the 100,000 already there, etc. And when people ask me how are you successful in selling, one of my quickest answers is I cheat. And I've talked about it extensively throughout this book and all the other books I've had a hand in. I sell quality products that are competitively priced, don't have to be the cheapest, and I spend my days talking to people qualified to buy it. That's what I call cheating, because I go to the Mexican restaurant where the trucks are outside, or I ask a local sorting his mail, what's the restaurant you're proudest of, Chowder Bowl, etc. People vote with their wallets. They're not going to lie to me in a post office. They didn't lie to me when they parked 20 trucks outside of Joe's Diner. They're there for their own selfish reasons. So as a salesperson, I like to follow that lead. I like to sell. We were talking about selling cars a couple of shows ago. Which car would you sell? Well, there's national information, of course. I don't know what the number one selling car is in the United States now, but it was for years Honda. This is a friend of mine who has a Honda told me, he said, Ben, they're wonderful. You shut the hood, you can weld it shut. You'll never have to open it again, and you're done. He was that big a believer in the quality of Honda. He said, you're not going to impress anybody when you pull up at the country club, but I'm telling you, you'll have the best running car there. So if I were going to sell cars in this area, we have a Honda dealership. I would double check your references. We talked about that last show. Make sure Honda is still at or near the top of best-selling cars. Then I would go to the dealership, the best dealership, and the owner and I would have serious talk, not the sales manager, not whoever picked me up when I walked in the door. The owner and I would have a serious talk about the advantages of hiring me while he sells me on the advantages of working for him. The other one I think I mentioned was if you don't have that type of opportunity or relationship, drive through your local shopping centers, the parking lot of the grocery store, this and so on, and look at the frames around the tag and start counting them. In our area, the answer would be Thompson's, because they have a Chevrolet dealership, a Cadillac dealership, a Toyota dealership, something else in 3 or 4 buildings, and then down the road they have something else they sell. So if I was going to sell cars in Placerville or the immediate area, I'd probably wind up at Thompson's selling something. And I know Toyota has a tremendous reputation. Maybe it would be that. But I cheat in that I find out what people want to buy. A lot of the sales books say, find your passion and sell that. Well, you may be a cult member of a club of one. Your passion hasn't caught fire. Other people don't care. In the book, in the chapter we're talking about here, the one that starts on page 17, the first step in sales success, I say sell something you would buy at full retail. Sell something you would sell to your mother at full retail. Sell something you believe in. But it doesn't have to be, I don't think it's mentioned in the book, or else every book would look like the Encyclopedia Britannica. It doesn't have to be something you have a passion about. It has to be something that your customers have a passion about. Get in front of the parade. You don't have to form the parade and hire the drum majors, train the drummer. Find out which way the parade's going and get in front of it and hold up that stick they hold up and march along with your fuzzy white hat on the top. You're now the leader of an established group. Now, the reason I mention one of the examples I always give is I could sell oil tankers. I don't know anything about oil tankers, but I would find out. I don't know why people buy them other than to ship oil, obviously, but why they pick this one versus that one. But I would find out. And once I was convinced that was the finest oil tanker on the planet, and if I were ever going to buy an oil tanker, this is the one I would buy, and I'd be prepared to defend that position, then that's the one I'm selling. I sold cosmetics, except out of morbid curiosity, I've never put any women's cosmetics on my face, body lotion, little face cream, but that comes from the drugstore. Because one of the problems when you get into business, you know too much about it. I'm not going to spend $50 for a jar of something when I know it costs no more to make than the jar beside it that sells for $2.99. The ingredients, there's pharmaceutical grade and there's cosmetic grade, and that's the only difference, and that's about 3 cents a jar difference in hard cost. So I want to sell something and use something that I personally like. But if the world is absolutely nuts about Holiday Magic Cosmetics Cherry Red lipstick, then I want cherry red lipstick, preferably in a jar with gold caps. So you find which way the crowd is going, find out why, find out if their decision was right, and the cumulative wisdom of people is awesome. That's the reason masterminds work. You get 10, 12 people sitting around a table with disparate backgrounds, education, etc., and cumulatively, they will pretty much come up, given a few minutes, they'll come up with the right answer or solve the solution. That's how Honda has become, let's pretend like Honda's still number one. I don't know that to be a fact. But the reason Honda is or was number one is a group of people voting with their wallets, talking to other people who have one or had a good experience or a bad experience, etc., decided this is the best car for the money on the planet. And if that's the case, and I want to make money selling cars, you'll find me at the first desk on the right when you open the automobile Honda dealership. And the same thing with the oil tankers, and the same thing with the cosmetic. I'll find out what you want. The Holiday Magic, is the catch was it was made from fruits, nuts, vegetables, and herbs. That's what the people who had the original product told Bill Patrick. That's how he bought it, and off we went. 4 or 5 years later, the FDA informed us there were no fruits, nuts, vegetables, or herbs in the product. There was stuff in there that made it smell like strawberry parfait, banana body lotion, etc. But we didn't know that. We sold it with a clear conscience.
Right.
So,
Right.
we had a meeting around the table. What are we going to do, guys? Do we go out of business or pay millions of dollars to the FDA and figure out some little loophole? We, before we left the room, had decided to say that it had the fresh scent, S on the end, scents of bananas, strawberries, almonds, mint, etc.
Right.
And we
Right.
paid a little fine, as best I recall, and we marched on. We just quit saying it. I picked up a product in our bathroom the other day, and I don't know what it was. Before we talk again, I'll be able to tell you. But it was one of those kills 99.9% of germs products, which is also on the Lysol can, the Listerine bottle, the whatever. But I'm a label reader, and I looked down and squinted, and I noticed for the first time the small lettering of the word above the huge 99.9%. It said, helps eliminate 99.9%. Well, so does warm water and a tissue.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
does cider vinegar, apple cider vinegar. That's my go-to for everything. Yeah, if my cat has a boo-boo, she gets it on her head. If my windows need to be washed, it's vinegar. I'm cheap. And you're talking about skincare and all these different products. I long time ago, decided that the more ingredients there was, something was going on my skin and I didn't know what it was or couldn't pronounce it. I didn't want it. It
That's the
worried
key.
me.
If you
I don't know
can't
what these,
pronounce it.
yeah, don't eat it, don't drink it, don't put it on your skin. And honestly, I use castor oil and coconut oil. My skin is gorgeous. That's it. That's all I do. Coconut
Well,
oil, castor oil.
yeah, and that's sort of what I said about having too much knowledge of the cosmetic business is dangerous. Because you say, well, this one looks like this, and this says this, and this. I said, honey, they're all the same. It would take a chemist. Mort Scott passed away, my chemist guy. But I said it would take a chemist to figure out the difference between this one and that one. And he can't. He can figure out the ingredients, but then there's the ingredients cost difference is almost nothing between the very best, most expensive, and there really aren't any bad products on the market. It's whether you like it or not, the way you react to it.
Afford
But
it.
from the one, yeah,
There was a time when I bought the most expensive stuff I could afford. Then when I would run out, I'd say, well, let me go back to castor oil. Oh, there you are. I was all
there we
happy
go.
again. Yeah.
Feels good again. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of it as we talk. Pond's is one, and there's some other product in the grocery store that people laugh at because it's the common one, but it's also the best selling. And the reason it's the best selling is after they get through laughing about it, they go home, use it, and like it. They don't know why there's no difference. It's not important,
Right.
but they know that there really isn't. And that's the reason your lady at the door selling cosmetics doesn't sell those products, because there's no money in them. I'll tell you, since it's out of business, I'm not going to ever restart it. With Carlotta Cosmetics, and this was 30 years ago, so prices not as much as we might think, but adjust for inflation. But the rule was, when I called the cosmetic guy and wanted to add a product to the line, the rule was it could not cost me more than $1. That included the lid, the silk screen label, and the ingredients in the container, and the shipping carton it all came in. 24 to a box, but whatever. The cost of that case had to be 24 divided by $1. That was, if it cost over $1, I didn't want to hear about it. So if I had a really good one for $1.10, I said, let me just keep life simple for you. If it costs over $1, I don't want to hear about it. So you adjust on your end. Don't make me adjust on my end. Now today that $1 is probably $5. 30 years later, it's probably $5. But the name of the game is the same. So we're down to and in right directly from the chapter, J. Douglas, I quote J. Douglas Edwards, who is also the mastermind behind another book I wrote, Sales Closing Power, which is sold along with the Closer series and so on. But J. Douglas Edwards said one time, and I wrote it down, and it's affected my life ever since in my sales life. He said, the only difference between a salesman, this was back in the days when you said man instead of salesperson, but the only difference between a salesman and a con man is belief in product. The techniques for selling it are the same. You have to believe in the product or be able to project that you believe in the product. Con, for some of our newer people, con man comes from the term confidence man. They win over your confidence. So they can do that through tricky sales techniques, or they can do it by really believing in the product. And that's part of my cheating. I don't sell products or services that I don't believe in. I just had one the other day that I wrote the marketing plan for and signed up. So in the copy, I could honestly say, Gigi and I are signed up. And we think this is great and so on. So we did. We signed up, and they started charging us whatever it is a month, $48 a month. And then no membership cards came. I didn't know the 800 number to call if I was actually going to use the service and so on. But the charges went on, and I kept thinking, well, when I get them in, I'll call and ask and point out this little flaw in their system. And it got up to over $700. And I know that figure because today, the gentleman behind the company, when I finally got a hold of him, complained about it and told him what the weakness in the system. He said, Ben, I really apologize. I've had other things, and he had all sorts of personal problems going on in his life. And he refunded the $700 and some odd dollars we had spent in monthly charges. And I rescinded my endorsement of it and told him he could use any of the copy that referred to Gigi and or me in it. Fortunately, they hadn't used it anyway, so yet. So that no harm had been done. But that's an example of, I got paid good money to endorse it. I got paid good money to write the copy because I trusted the guy, didn't know what was going on in his life. It didn't make that possible, and we had to kill the whole concept. Now, cleaned up and revised. If it comes back one day, I'll announce it on one of these shows, because the concept is great. The execution was terrible, and therefore I will not be associated with it. So I pulled my endorsement. The only difference between a con man and a salesman is belief in product. When I wrote the copy, I believed in the service. Now I don't. Therefore, we don't do that anymore. And that was part of in that chapter. There's a thing, if you don't believe in your product or service, to the extent you and I have been talking about today, when you go to the office tomorrow morning, resign. If it's not fixable, it's not worth selling your soul for. There's no reason to get up in the morning and dread going to work. You should get up in the morning looking forward to going to work, to talking to all the nice people you're going to share your wonderful opportunity with. And as soon as I made that decision, and it was subconscious in the beginning, but once I realized that it really was a concept and had a way to explain it to other people and so on, it became my North Star. And selling life became so much easier because I don't have a care in the world about the quality of the product or service I'm selling. It's fine. My rule from Mort Scott when he was developing all of our products, and he invented Bromo Seltzer, Sally Hansen, Hard as Nails, uh, a wonderful product that made him a multimillionaire if he wasn't already one, was a thing called Making Love Body Lotion. It not only felt good, smelled good, it tasted good. And he advertised it on one of those radio uh, cutting edge shows where they talked about things that you never thought you'd hear about on the radio. And he made millions of dollars with it. He really knew his stuff. And when he would come to me, as he did occasionally, and said, all right, Ben, we ought to add whatever. What do you want in it? I said, who do you think you're talking to? I don't know what I want in it. If I knew what I wanted in it, you wouldn't have a job. You put in what you think ought to be in it. But here's the one requirement. When I stand on stage and hold up a jar of it, I want to be able to say that it is the finest product of its kind that you can buy. You may or may not like the scent. That's up to you. You may or may not like the color. That's up to you. You may or may not like the feel of it. That's up to you. But the quality of it is beyond reproach because we use the finest grade of pharmaceutical grade ingredients in all of our products. You cannot buy a better product. It's impossible. And so when I can stand on stage and say that, I can sell it with great honor. And then again, if they don't like, we had a product called honey and almond mint jelly, and it was a face scrub. You put it on, it smelled like mint, and that gritty feeling you had, what were literally almond things. It was the only thing in the Holiday Magic line that really was fruits, nuts, or vegetables. It was broken up almonds, little pieces of it. A lot of it was one of those products you either loved or you hated. But that didn't change the fact that it was the best quality you could possibly have. And when I can stand up in front of a room and say that about any product or service, I'm in. And then the trick is to stand in front of the right crowd. Don't stand in front of a bunch of burly truck drivers and try and sell them some feminine skin lotion. You're wasting your time. But if you get in front of the right crowd and you can swear to its quality and authenticity, you've hit the sweet spot. Don't sell. People say, I've told this many times, but people said to me one time in a seminar, it was mostly automobile people. And this guy raised his hand. He said, Mr. Gay, we're having trouble here. And it was a little group of people. They were all dressed alike. I mean, I could have identified them. It wasn't a uniform like a Century 21 gold coat, but they all had a shabbiness. They looked like they'd all bought their clothes at the same Goodwill store. And so I pretty much knew. I said, is it this group? I waved my hand away. Yeah. I said, what are you selling? Yugos. I said, I should have guessed.
The Hugo story. I remember this. Okay, keep
Yeah.
going because it's a great
Well,
story.
yeah. And they said, how can we sell more Yugos? I said, get a gun run really effective ads that lure people in, get them in your closing room, and tell them you're going to start shooting the kids one at a time if they don't buy a Yugo. Short of
Ouch.
that, I don't know. It's a piece of crap. You know
Yeah.
it, and I know it. When you go to open the door to show them the inside, you're afraid the door handle's going to come off, aren't you? And they nodded. I said, good. When this meeting is over, go back to the office, clean out your desk, and go to work for somebody who sells a quality product. And it's not a Yugo.
Right.
Now, in Yugo's defense, they may have, this is years ago, maybe they changed, but it was the cheapest car in America for a reason. It had the cheapest parts in America, it had the cheapest engineering. It was a piece of crap that came with four tires.
Eyes on one. I don't even know what they look like.
Me either.
Not a clue. But you're right. And you make that point in this particular chapter. And this is where, of course, the first time I came across the term master closer. There's a huge difference between being a master closer, which is what you are, and just trying to get out in front of somebody and, say, do you want to buy my shrimp? We have shrimp trucks all over the place here. We all know, don't go to that one. That stuff's old. He dumped
Absolutely.
ammonia in there. That shrimp is not fresh. We know. We know. But the thing is, if you're selling something that you can stand up and say, "Oh yeah, it's shrimp. I was just out in the Gulf of Mexico this morning," and you believe it and I believe it, I'll buy your darn shrimp.
Right.
But
And
I'm not
Captain
going to buy
Willie, yeah,
who's
Captain Willie, who charters who from whom we chartered the boat, he knows where the
oh,
best fishing beds are. Put that sales
right.
infiltration. Put them in the boat. Let them feel. But if I was selling
Exactly.
shrimp, by the time I was through with my presentation, you'd be seasick. I would have you in the boat, out on the water with me at the crack of dawn, pulling in the shrimp baskets or whatever they're called, and so on. You'd be there with me. Quick sales story to do with shrimp. I know we're running out of time. There's a place that Mort Scott, the cosmetic genius, and I used to go on weekends. We went dirt biking for some reason. We each got a Yamaha dirt bike, and we would ride around in the hills of Marin County. And the end of every one of our journeys, we'd go to a little hole in the wall things. It
Oh,
reminds me of
excuse
when you were talking about the Mexican restaurant called China Camp. And China Camp was where real fishermen went. They didn't have fancy reels, they had bamboo poles or whatever, and they would rent boats and go out. But the reason we went there was it was sort of a dive, and we felt like we were being cool, the hobnob with the real folks, and we'd have a beer. So one day I'm sitting there, and this has to do with labeling and of products and so on. We're sitting there, we've ordered our beer, and old fisherman comes in and says, "I'd like some of that shrimp bait." And so a guy reaches down in the cooler with his ice cream scoop and plops a big glob of shrimp scampi in this cardboard box and hands it to him. I said, "You just gave me a great idea. Do you have shrimp?" And it was $1. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. You have to adjust for inflation. It was $1. And so I said, "You just gave me a good idea. I'll have a shrimp cocktail. Have you got that?" And he said, "Certainly." Reaches down in the same cooler, picks up the same ice cream scoop, pops a big glob in a little glass, cocktail glass, and shoves it in front of me, and squirts some sauce on top, some hot sauce or whatever, cocktail sauce. So that'd be $3. I said, "You got it from the same place where you just got the shrimp bait for that guy. Why is his $1 and mine's $3?" He said, "Because he asked for bait. You asked for a shrimp cocktail." I
told
said, "Well,
you.
then," I said, kidding. I love to kid with people. I said, "The next time I come in here, I'm ordering bait instead of a shrimp cocktail." He said, "That's fine with me. It'd be just $1. It'll come in a cardboard container, and you don't get cocktail sauce." And then as he turned away, he said over his shoulder, "Or a fork."
Oh. Now I'm I eat shrimp the way other people eat chicken or hamburgers. I eat shrimp all the
Yeah.
time. I'm just miles down from the Gulf of Mexico, so it's fresh food for us. But my question would be, is it peeled shrimp? I mean, did anybody peel that stuff? Is it cooked shrimp? What are we eating here?
Yeah, these are cooked, and they were about the size of one of your fingernails.
Oh,
Uh,
those
it,
little
it,
baby
it's
ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's scampi. Yeah,
Yeah,
scampi.
those are the ones you put on top of a salad. Those are not shrimp. I don't know what those are.
Don't say that at China Camp. If you
Okay, I
order real
won't.
shrimp, it'll be $15.
Oh my God. No, no, I want my shrimp, but I boil my own. So mine come, straight out of the Gulf. They're good. They're yummy. Okay, I wanted to, and I was listening. Oh, we are running out of time. When I was reading this chapter again, for some reason I got sidetracked and I started reading about Charles Kettering. He massively fascinating guy. And he said this, which I thought was pretty, we're talking about high expectations when you're in
Mhm.
sales. You have to have them, the people you are selling to have to have high expectations. And he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, that high expectations can be a very powerful tool for personal and professional development. Those expectations, I think he said set clear standards and benchmarks that individuals and teams can strive towards. So honestly, if you're not continuously, and this is what I've learned from you, if you're not continuously improving and you're not really doing sales infiltration, noted like you're watching leadership experts, Trump is one, high expectations. I mean, you watch him and he's setting those expectations. I don't care if you vote for him or not. I'm just telling you what I see. And
Mhm.
those expectations help clarify, do I want to vote for this guy? Do I want to work with this guy? What about this lady over here? Do I want to buy her products? You, as the person who is speaking and selling and offering, have to have those high expectations and you need to clarify them. If you don't, you're not going to do well in your line of work.
Absolutely. Yeah, and after the election is over, I am a political junkie, but after the election is over, let's dissect it with sales infiltration, et cetera, in mind, because I know who's going to win, and if I'm wrong, I know why. I know who's going to win, and I know why that person is going to win,
Oh,
because
I
they have
agree with you.
followed
We've talked
certain,
about this. I know why too.
yeah,
So, yeah, yeah. And
and
listen, I read Trump's book in particular. I mean, he's very articulate, but he has written several books that if you want to learn about sales, go read some of those books.
mhm,
Seriously.
the art of the deal is excellent. For instance, but there are several. But I really don't want to get off into that because, as Billy Graham was once told by his mentor, he said, Billy, stay out, as he was getting his footing back in the late 40s and starting to take off. He said to Billy, don't get into politics. And he says, well, I have my political opinion. He said, you may have them, but as soon as you voice them, you'll lose half your audience. So,
And I
so
agree. Yeah, and I'm watching all of this saying, wow, there is so much to learn from both sides. So much to learn.
absolutely.
In some
Yep.
cases, like, what the hell was that? There's a lot of that going. It's like I'm just
On both
watching it
sides.
fly by on both sides. That's exactly right. I'm
Yeah.
not picking a side, but it's fascinating to watch because, and you and I have talked about this, it's about persuasion. It's all about persuasion. So
Yep.
there's a lot to dissect. I agree with you.
while it's while it's still fresh in everybody's mind and you can access it, have our listeners. I suggest you do this. Trump and Franklin Graham were together the other day at one of the horrible spots in North Carolina, which got devastated and hasn't been taken care of by the people who should be taking care of it. But there's Franklin with his big truck and all. And as soon as I saw him, I thought, oh, I wonder you talked to your dad because your dad was told to stay out of politics. You watch the video of Franklin Graham and Trump in North Carolina at a scene of one of the many scenes of disaster, and I know that he talked to his father. He was using sales infiltration to get a guy who can get a huge audience to a spot to raise money, a Samaritan's Purse, so he could
I
help these
donated.
people,
I donated
right?
right after you and I talked about it.
Okay. But if you watch the video, he wasn't with his arm around Trump. He was always about 15 feet away, looking sincere. And it reminded me of Bear Bryant. Bear Bryant used to tell his football players, when you get in the end zone, don't act like it's the first time you've ever been there. I was watching Franklin Graham. This isn't the first time he's been in a big crowd. It's not the first time he was in an influential position. It's not the first time he was hobnobbing with former presidents, popes, kings, whatever. So he wasn't doing the, oh, I can't believe I'm here look. He looked like a businessman assessing a piece of property. He was wandering around, nodding, squinting, and always about 15, 20 feet away from Trump. And I don't mean that as an insult to Trump. I mean as a sales thing. They were sales infiltrating each other. Trump was doing Franklin
Yeah.
some good by building the crowd and endorsing him. And Graham was doing Trump good by making him look like, oh, how bad could he be? He's hanging out with Frank Graham. But both of them understood why they were there and what they were really up to. They didn't fall into the trap of going in under the ether and getting caught up in the moment. But when the election is over, let's go back and dissect it, because it is
I would like
fascinating to
to.
watch them work and see what they're really up to.
And you can learn so much by watching these people, all of them at all levels. You don't
Yep.
have to like or admire them. And in some cases, I can barely stand to look at some faces, but there's still
Mm-hmm.
lessons for me to learn. A lot of them. Listen, Ben, we are out of time. I didn't get you to tell people where they can get the books. So let's do that very quickly.
Okay, very quickly, if you want to get any part of the Closers series signed at lower prices than even on my website, fully guaranteed with our famous lifetime money back guarantee, go to stores, STORES dot ebay.com/, all one word, Ronzoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS, stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni Books. In by 2, we'll ship it the same day.
Listen, what are we going to talk about next week?
Next week, let's go to, I figured you'd ask that. Let's go to page 203. That's 205. Whenever asked a question, put on your reading glasses before you answer. Page 205 in the Closers Part 2, Saving the Ruined Sale.
Okay, got it. Oh, that one sounds good. Okay, we are out of time. I can't believe how quickly this went, but we always do go a little bit far afield. Where can people did did I even ask about Ronzoni books? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
we
having one of
did
those
that. So
days. You just did that. Sorry. My
let's
brain is
just
just
leave it
kind
at
of,
that.
yeah, my
Leave it at
brain's
that. They
wandering
got enough
around.
they have enough to write down.
Sorry about that. Okay, well, listen, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found the insights and the advice valuable as you take steps towards your sales success. And we did start with the first chapter, and you were talking about master sales, be a master salesperson. That's kind of where you want to get to, isn't it? So start there and work your way through the book. But we've been doing this for about a year now, and we've just been going back and forth through the different parts of the book. It's fascinating. We do get there eventually. But what we would love for you to do is pick up the books, make them part of your entrepreneurial library, and ask us questions. Pick up the book when we say we're opening it up on this chapter on this page. Read along with us, go along with us. And then that way, when this episode is over and it comes out today, later on today, call us. Send us a note. We're easy to find. You can get me at support@yourofficeontheweb.com. Ben, you can email him. Ben, did you share that already? Your email address?
I just do the order page. That'll be fine.
Okay, good. So just, and we love to answer those questions. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound this scattered, but it's been one of those days. It really has. I don't have any excuses. I'm just not, my brain is not functioning all that well today, but it happens. Anyway, everybody, thank you for joining us today. We hope you found everything valuable. Get in touch with us, read the books, follow along, and we will see you next week. Ben, thank you.
Thank you.